I am trying to get caught up on book tags. I have quite a few, but I love to be tagged. It's just that I need to sit down and actually do the tags that I'm tagged in. Tonight I'm going to do the Booktube Community Joy and Gratitude tag. This was created by Book Chat with Pat to celebrate her reaching 2,000 subscribers. I was tagged by Daniela from Uncommon Reader way back in like October. So it's time that I get around to getting these done. I will put Daniela and Pat's channels in the description box. They are two booktubers that I love to watch. Daniela lives in Italy and reads all kinds of books that I've never even heard of. Pat is a former teacher and lives here in the US, and she has so much knowledge and just cool insights on things. Both are channels that I watch regularly. Every time they come out with something new, I'm watching. And so I am delighted to do this tag. Now, this tag focuses on the joy and gratitude that we feel towards the Booktube community. I've had my channel for a little over a year and a half, and I am so happy that I joined this community. I have met so many great friends already. I've learned so much. I've been so inspired. It has changed my life just in a year and a half. So let's get right into the tag. The first question says, name an author whose books bring you joy, or discuss a specific book that made you feel joyful. There's quite a few, but one author that I know I will love every time I pick up one of his books is Wilkie Collins. He is the author of books like The Woman in White and The Moonstone. He has one called The Haunted Hotel that I purchased in England last year and just read in just not even an hour. I just gobbled it up. He's funny and mysterious, and he gets people, like his characters, just they're relatable, and just his humor makes it all really great. He was good friends with Charles Dickens, and so you've got that same kind of humor going on. I really enjoy Wilkie Collins. Number 2 is discuss something about the Booktube community that you find joyful. I really love listening to readers who are excited about what they're reading, who are finding joy in their reading, and it is obvious in the way that they talk about their books. So one of the people I'm thinking of is Miriam from Miriam Elizabeth Reads. I have been watching a lot of her videos lately, and I was just thinking this yesterday. She made a video on siblings and like different books that feature sibling relationships. I'm gonna link it in the description box because this video is so just kind. It is kind, it is gentle. She is one of 5 children. I think she said she has 3 sisters and a brother. And the way she talks about these, her siblings and these books that she enjoys with sibling relationships, you know, the blessing that she has of being in that large family, like that just brought me so much joy. I loved watching that video so much. And I haven't had a chance even to comment and tell her that yet because I haven't gone through and made all my comments on the stuff I was watching while driving yesterday. But she is a channel that just really, she's positive, and the things that she reads and talks about are positive. And I right now am in a season of my life where I am purposefully reading things that aren't necessarily like the stuff that I 100% can't wait to read, but I'm reading things that are putting me in a place of positivity and a mindset of peace. It's just what I need right now, and I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this. I got a whole stack of, you know, Wuthering Heights and Rebecca and, you know, all that kind of stuff that's just kind of depressing. I got all that kind of stuff waiting for me too. But right now I just really need some peaceful and positive reads. And so I just feel like a lot of the things she talks about are in that vein. And it just brings me a lot of joy when I'm listening to readers talk about things that are positive, right? And by no means do I believe that we should only be reading positive things. I think it's better for us for sure. But I know that, you know, we got to face the reality of the world, and it's not all fancy and flowers and whatever. But being exposed to more uplifting reads just kind of encourages me to know that there's some stuff out there when everything gets kind of dark and I just need to retreat into, you know, like a Pollyanna mentality. That I've got all these great recommendations. Oh, I forgot to give you the quote. So she has a quote with each one of her like subjects. And the subject that I just did the last two questions was joy. And her quote was, "Let's be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom." Ah, that describes Miriam for sure. That was by Marcel Proust. The next question is concerning friendship. And that quote is, "Kindred spirits are not so scarce as I used to think. It's splendid to find out there are so many of them in the world." We know who that is, right? Anne of Green Gables. So the question number 3 is to discuss a book that focuses primarily on friendship. One book I'm thinking of, it's actually a series. It's the Mark of the Lion series by Francine Rivers. And especially in the first 2 books, A Voice in the Wind and As Sure as the Dawn, we have a friendship that is very one-sided, and that is the friendship between the slave girl Hadassah and her, mistress, Julia. The thing about this friendship is that Hadassah is mocked, abused, treated horribly by Julia and others around her. The story takes place just after Jerusalem was, invaded, and so many of the Jewish people were captured and sold into slavery. And Hadassah is a slave to this Roman household. She is especially assigned to the daughter of the household, Julia, who is extremely spoiled and extremely rebellious, angry, bitter sort of a person. And Hadassah goes through so many horrific things as Julia's servant girl that Julia doesn't even know or understand. And Hadassah has committed herself to Julia to the point of even facing death in order to be loyal to her mistress. She has decided that she is going to be a friend to Julia, pray for her, and try to be a light to her, because she sees the destruction that Julia is allowing into her own life. And Hadassah's, deepest desire, I guess, is for Julia to come to a saving faith in Christ. And so for the first 2 books, she is just, you just want to slap Julia. She's horrible to Hadassah, but Hadassah is a constant friend. And when I think about friendship, it's not always a two-way street, right? Sometimes we are in friendships that others would look at and say, "What are you thinking? Why are you holding on? Why are you sticking around?" Now, I don't necessarily advocate toxic friendships, but in the case of this story, Hadassah's whole heart was just focused on Julia's salvation. So really fantastic example of what it really means to be a true friend. All right, question 4. The topic is laughter. It says, "There's nothing like deep breaths after laughing that hard. Nothing in the world like a sore stomach for the right reasons." And that's from Stephen Chbosky, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So the question is to discuss a book or author that makes you laugh. Now, that stack of Wuthering Heights and Rebecca and all that kind of stuff. I don't read a ton of funny books. I usually am reading like dramatic, classic stuff. So aside from Wilkie Collins, who I already said, and Jane Austen, who always makes me laugh, I definitely am laughing at these stories by Beth Brower, The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. She is just so funny. Like, her sense of humor is so dry and so sarcastic, and I'm just here for it. Like, it is completely my sense of humor. So I really, really love these stories so far. They're super funny. People have compared these stories to Jane Austen's stories. The story itself is not really all that much compared to a Jane Austen story. They're set in late Victorian times, for one thing, and the character is very independent, and she does things that Jane's characters never could do. The reason why I think that these are compared to Jane Austen is because it's Jane Austen's humor. It's her sarcasm and dry humor and feistiness. It's the personality of Emma M. Lyon is very similar to some of Jane Austen's characters and who she seemed to have been herself. You know, the impression that we get of her from reading her letters and reading things written about her. Next topic is community. It says, we cannot live only for ourselves. 1,000 fibers connect us with our fellow men. That's Herman Melville. Number 5, discuss a book where the idea of community is important. My first thought that came to mind is the story called Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. In that story, we have a family who helps another family hide and escape from Nazi soldiers during World War II. And stories like that, you know, like Corrie ten Boom and her biographical stories, things like that, where you have people sacrificing their own safety, the safety of their entire family, the, you know, stability of their jobs or whatever in order to help people who are being persecuted and to, you know, try to bring them to safety, try to just lend a hand to them, right? Not knowing if it's, you know, gonna work and if they are gonna be safe and they're gonna be, you know, protected. I love stories like that. I love reading stories about heroes during that period of our history, and just really any kind of hero stories like that, where people are just willing to sacrifice for the good of others, right? Like, I hope that I would be that person if I was ever in that situation where I would just lay it all down in order to make sure that someone else, you know, has an opportunity at safety and peace and all that stuff. So anyway, that story, Number the Stars, it's a book that I read as a kid and have read several times since. It's what introduced me to the Holocaust and the persecution of Jews and other people during that time. And it's just one of my favorite stories I come back to pretty often. Number 6 is to discuss a communal reading experience that you have had. What I'm thinking of is about 10, 11 years ago, our family was part of a homeschool co-op in a really tiny little town, just a few families, and we met in an old building downtown, like, you know, from the 1800s, and it was just so cozy and so cozily decorated. And we would meet once a week, and each week we'd have like a different theme. Parents would plan something, and we would all just kind of sit together for a while in a circle, or just, you know, kind of camp out around the room. And the lights were low, and we had these cozy couches, and just, it was such a mood experience. And the moms and the kids, and we'd all just kind of sit around and we'd hang out together, and we'd talk, and we'd have worship time. So someone might do a presentation or whatever. We just had like a little learning time together, and then we broke off and did an art project and had snacks. But during that presentation time, I can remember for a little while, I don't even remember what we were reading, but we were all reading and discussing and having kind of like a book club. And I can remember one of the mom friends taught us that in the 90s, if you were at the coffee shop and you enjoyed whatever you were listening to, you know, whether it was a reading or, you know, music or whatever, that people would snap. You wouldn't clap, you would snap, right? And I can't really do it, like, if I'm gonna do it where it like doesn't look obnoxious, you can't actually hear the snap, so I have to be like but so I can just like, and she was just so cool, right, with this super trendy hair and really chic, you know, way of dressing, and she was just like the coolest mom. And so she taught us all that, and so we would snap at the end of whatever reading or whatever someone had said that was just, you know, we appreciated, and so we would snap and have our little coffee shop experience. And I will never forget that. That was a really fun time. All right, and then the last category is gratitude, and there's a quote by Shakespeare. It says, "I can no other answer make but thanks and thanks." That's from Twelfth Night. And the question is, name a book in which a character demonstrates real gratitude, or name a book that left you feeling a sense of gratitude. For this one, the first thing that comes to mind is actually a collection of books. It's the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. In those books, we find all of the instructions from God of how he wants us to live our lives. And he originally gave this to his people Israel, those who were born into the family of Israel, and also those who were grafted in, who had just chosen to join and chosen to put their faith in this God, even though they weren't born into the line of the Israelite people, right? And once he gave the people those instructions, it was like, okay, we know what to do now, right? We have all this confusion and mixing and whatever from all these other religions and gods and faiths and pagan things and weird stuff. And we just what do we do, God, right? They'd been in Egypt and they'd been exposed to things and they were confused, right? And actually, I guess we can also add the book of Nehemiah in there, because in Nehemiah, kind of the same things happened. The people had been in exile for so long. And then they came back and they found that book again, the book of the law. It's called the Torah. And they found that and they read it, right? They got up and read it. And the people were just weeping because they were so overcome with, oh, I didn't know that these are instructions. And I've been so confused because, you know, in these other places that we were exiled to, there was so much mixing. There were so many other gods. There were so many other ways. And I didn't know, but now I know. And now it's clear. And I realized that, you know, God gave his instructions for life there in the first 5 books. And then in Nehemiah, he reminded them, right? And then in the New Testament, we have Jesus coming to remind us again, right? It's like, hey, guys, let me clarify some stuff for you. It's not just the act of murder, it's the thought of murder, like all that, right? And we just have multiple reminders throughout the Word of God's original instructions of how to live. When I realized that, like, that changed my life, because I didn't grow up in church. I just kind of went to churches with, you know, my friends. And so I had been exposed to lots of different doctrines and lots of different, you know, denominations and ways of doing things and interpretations and all kinds of things. And then when I married my husband, we started, you know, solidly going to a church. And then, you know, that was what we learned or whatever. But as I'd read things in the Bible, and then I'd kind of like compare it to what the church was doing or my church friends were doing or the pastors were doing. And I'd be like, some of this doesn't line up. And why does Paul say this, but this doesn't actually happen in the churches nowadays? And, you know, why? I had so many confusions and so many questions. And then when I realized that God actually put all of his instructions there, right there in the Bible for me to read straight from his mouth, right? It just helped me clear up all of that. Because all the other stuff that other people have taught, you know, other biblical figures have taught or have said, you know, this is the way we walk out God's instructions. We do it in this way, that. And Paul did a lot of that, right? This is the way that we walk out God's instructions. And it could be confusing because of the time period and, you know, how women were treated and all that kind of stuff. But there is a place, though, that we can actually come back to God's original instructions. And that is found in the Torah and, you know, those first 5 books. So there you go. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have been introduced to that, right? Because in a lot of times in church, they kind of skip over, you know, Leviticus and Deuteronomy. But when you actually take the time to read them, you realize, oh, there's some good instructions for life here, right? And this is what God, you know, intended for Israel. And if I'm going to be grafted in as a child of God, right, then that makes me a Hebrew and an Israelite and all that kind of stuff as well. So, you know, I'm just really grateful that God, you know, just kind of showed me that, because, you know, yes, it's fine to pull from different Christians and be, you know, influenced and inspired by the different ways that people are doing things. But when it comes right down to it, there is a path. There is a way that God made clear for us. So if we ever have any question on if this is okay or not, we can go back to those instructions, right? So super grateful for that. All right, and then I'm going to see if there's anybody who has not yet done this tag that I can tag, because it's a really old tag, I think, and it's possible that like everybody has done it. So if I can find somebody, I will tag you guys. Otherwise, I'll go find some new booktubers that I haven't met yet and tag them. I hope everybody is having a good day. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.